Please welcome to the stage Barry Malone, Deputy Editor for Context, and Albert Hahn, Video Correspondent for Context.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Before we start, I just have a quick announcement to make. Lunch will now be 1 hour because we're running just a touch behind. So if you could all be back here at 1:30 for the next session, then that'd be great. As the voice of God just said, I'm the Deputy Editor-in-Chief for Context. This is Albert Hahn. He's one of our video producers. Today, we're going to show you some of the context content, some of the journalism that we make. I'm sure most of you saw Fabio Teixeira's excellent presentation earlier, which gave you a flavor. And before we cross over to have a look at that video, I'm just going to give you a little spiel about Context again. So Context, the artist formerly known as Thomson Reuters Foundation News, focuses on 3 huge challenges facing humanity right now. We cover climate change, we cover the impact of tech on society, and we cover the need for more inclusive economies. One of the things that we're trying to do, and I think we're doing quite well, is we're focusing on the intersection between those 3 coverage areas. And a lot of the stories will cross over sometimes 3 of those topic areas. One thing that I just want to tell you guys quickly about Context, one of my favorite things about Context, and it's one of the reasons why I came to work here, is we have correspondents all over the world. We're really proud and really grateful to have such a good footprint in so many different places. So we have correspondents in DC, in Brussels, in London, yes, but we have correspondents in many, many other places. We're in Cambodia, we're in Bangladesh, we're in India, we're in the Philippines, we're in Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa. You name a part of the world, and we can bring you on-the-ground reporting from there. We also have a network of 300 freelancers who we use very frequently also. So basically what we're about for an audience like you is bringing you verified, trustworthy information from the ground, anywhere in the world, that we hope that can help you to make better decisions. So that's my pitch on Context, and now we're going to show you something about Context. So as I said, Albert is one of our crack video producers. One of the things that we've been doing as well is we're building new ways of telling stories. So we're launching new newsletters. We've recently launched a new podcast, which you can find on context.news, and we've been building out our video team, and Albert is a key part of that team. So we're going to see today a video on lab-grown milk, Albert, right?
Yes.
So my first question is, what is lab-grown milk?
Well, lab-grown milk and the lab-grown industry in general, proponents say it's the future of food. If in recent years we've seen the rise of plant-based burgers, plant-based milks, lab-grown wants to take that a step further. And by producing the exact same meat, the exact same dairy products that we love, but just without the animal part of it.
Okay, burning question, Albert. What does lab-grown milk taste like?
I've had it a couple of times. I still feel fine for now. No, but really, I think it's one of the key things about lab-grown products is that, you know, if you've had a lab-grown burger or a lab-grown sort of milkshake, you'll notice that it's similar, but not quite there in terms of the quote-unquote real thing. And the idea of lab-grown products is that it has the exact same texture, the taste that you associate with conventional products.
I spoke a little bit about context, so could you maybe explain to the audience, why did we cover this? Why was this a context story specifically?
Yeah, so I became fascinated with the lab-grown industry because it makes a very big promise. It promises to take animals out of the food chain and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it secures supply chains, and reduce costs for consumers. And it's one of the topics that has so many facets. And I think with a topic like this, Context is in a good position to cover because we look at issues from these perspectives of tech, of climate change, of inclusive economies. And you know, we have that journalistic rigor while also making it in an accessible and engaging way.
Excellent. Okay, let's take a look at your video, Albert.
Right.
And just a reminder, lunch will be an hour. Thank you.
Okay.
This isn't a cow,
So,
but it's producing dairy that goes into this yogurt
and this cream cheese. It's run out of a lab on the outskirts of Tel Aviv by a tech company called Remilk. They're a leader in the emerging lab-grown dairy industry. It's been overshadowed by lab-grown meat, but labs like these are trying to solve the same problem, taking heavily polluting animals out of the food chain as a way to fight climate change.
We're not changing the final product. We're just changing the way to produce it.
So is it working?
This is Lab Made, a series about an industry challenging the way we think about food and whether it can live up to its promise of changing the world.
We love our dairy products, whether it's ice cream, cream cheese, cheese from all over the world.
But that's a problem. Most dairy comes from cows, with some from goats, buffalo, sheep, and others. And their burps and farts emit methane.
A lot of it. Methane's a big contributor to climate change. The gas traps more heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide.
Raising animals and the crops to feed them also uses up tons of natural resources. More than half of the world's arable land, and a lot of water.
Enter lab-grown dairy.
Instead of growing a cow for several years until it starts producing milk, the entire process from starting fermenting the microbe until you have a final product is only taking a few days.
The lab-grown industry has gotten more than $1 billion in investments over the last 5 years, and there's dozens of companies around the world looking to do similar things.
Unlike lab-grown meat, animal-free dairy uses a process that already exists for things like medicine and beer, with machines like these. It's called precision fermentation.
We'll explain that in a minute. The fact that this tech already exists is why it's been approved for sale in several countries. In the US, it's considered GRAS, or generally recognized as safe. One US company, Perfect Day, has produced its own animal-free dairy that's used in this ice cream.
This is my colleague Ashley in New York.
So I got the chocolate ice cream.
Nice.
Let's see how it goes. I feel like I can finish the pint easily. I love it.
Despite the industry growth, there's not a lot of studies out there about the environmental impact of lab-grown dairy. One of the most cited ones was commissioned by Perfect Day, the company that makes that ice cream. The paper suggests that the environmental footprint of its protein production can be up to 96% lower than the same protein found in traditional milk, an energy savings equivalent to what 28 million American homes would use in a year. But some people have a problem with this study, and to understand that, we need to understand how lab-grown dairy is made. So remember this thing called precision fermentation I mentioned?
To explain how it works, I brought in a friend, a precision fermentation microbe.
Hey! Whew. Precision fermentation works by copying down the DNA sequence of a milk protein and giving it as an instruction manual to microorganisms. These microbes then multiply in fermenters while producing milk protein. It's the same thing that happens in beer brewing. What the? But with protein instead.
And here's a key thing about this.
Only about 20% of what comes out of precision fermentation is dairy protein. Most of it is a byproduct called biomass, the equivalent of leftover grain during the beer making process. This is where the problem comes in.
Perfect Day study, they assumed that the microbial biomass is used as a pet food. There are issues with utilizing this biomass because it is genetically modified.
This is Hannah Tuomisto. Her team is one of the few independent groups who study precision fermentation.
What she's saying is that the study's best case scenario in cutting down emissions relies on using that biomass as pet food. But that might not be possible in places like the EU, where genetically modified products are far more strictly regulated. According to another study, which was funded by Fonterra, a New Zealand dairy company, if we're only looking at the protein end product of each process, lab-grown isn't greener than conventional dairy by default.
How production facilities source their energy is a big question, and also where they get the sugar needed to grow the microbes. In a worst-case scenario, lab-grown dairy might even have a bigger carbon footprint.
There is no kind of perfect solution to produced milk protein. There are things that affect the results and sustainability in both cases.
In response to our questions, Perfect Day said it's aware of the allocation problem between protein and biomass. It noted that its study was limited to the US, where its protein would have a smaller carbon footprint if it accounted for 100% of emissions.
So why is cultivated dairy still a good idea if plenty of dairy alternatives already exist?
The climate emergency is so dire and animal conditions are so dire, we can't give it another century to see if everyone just goes plant-based. We need something. It's like a stepping stone in a way.
For consumers, animal-free dairy offers the exact same nutrients as traditional dairy, many of which can't be found in alternatives like oat or soy milk. That is, of course, if we can afford it. For now, animal-free dairy is still a lot more expensive than traditional milk and non-dairy alternatives. Remilk wouldn't say how much their test products currently cost, but it believes mass production is the main way of bringing prices down. This June, it announced it's building the world's largest precision fermentation plant in Denmark and plans to start selling their products by the end of the year.
Eventually, to outperform the traditional market, we need two things. We need to be quality parity, which means that we have the same taste, the same functionality and everything, and we need to be at least cost parity.
So is the taste worth it?
Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you.
It's really good.
The jury's still out on what a world filled with lab-grown dairy products will look like. If the tech becomes as good for the environment and the wallet as it promises to be, then there might just be some, well, greener pastures out there for cows in the near future.
Fitting, right?
Yeah, this is an example of a retired cow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. This video is part of a series about the world of lab-grown foods, an industry that promises tech solutions for global issues like climate change, food security, and others by changing what we eat. In the next episode, we'll look at whether lab-grown meat can be considered kosher or halal.